Hello and welcome back for Creators.Chat 13.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I didn't do my research.
I want to say 13. After a 2.5 year hiatus, we're consistent.
Yeah.
Like that is the one thing you can always say about us is consistency. Yeah, we're pretty bad. Why are we giving advice to people?
I don't know. Why are you here, guys?
No one should listen to us.
Anyway.
Yay. So we're going to talk about some fun stuff today. We're going to talk about how you shouldn't just be an artist. Because we're artists and we like being artists and we want to tell everyone to be artists. But there's kind of a problem with just being an artist. And that's kind of something we want to get into. And this is actually your idea. So I'm going to let you kind of get us started here.
Thanks.
And set the mood.
Yeah, so this kind of stems from the fact that the pool of incredible artists is growing exponentially. And I think that's probably just because information is more readily available than it ever has been before. Like we can just go on the internet and more artists, like phenomenally talented artists, are putting their tutorials out on the internet. I mean, you're probably partly to blame for this with your whole don't go to art school thing. Look how it turned out. Suddenly everyone's really good at art.
Now no one goes to art school and everyone's great.
Suddenly there's a ton of resources out there, more than there've ever been. And the access to tools is just growing. There's more and more technology and programs. And it's just the bar for creating good art is just always on the move. Every time we make a step forward, we just look around and so is everyone else, and more so. And it's got to the point now where once upon a time it used to be kind of impressive when someone was really good at art. It was considered this rare gift. Now there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of professional level artists in the world. It's obscene. And suddenly it's got to the point where simply being good at art just isn't enough to make us stand out. And it's got a lot of us freaking out because, for instance, when I first wanted to be an artist, I think that's probably about 10 years ago now that I first considered becoming a professional artist, all you needed was to be good at art. And then somewhere along the way, while I was on that journey, actually while I'm trying to get to the point where I'm good enough, I found out that being good enough wasn't enough, that everyone's really good, and it's scary. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why that's a problem, what we can do instead. And I swear it's good news. I'm making it sound really bleak,
but it's all happy.
Yeah,
Yay.
I think so.
Yeah. This is something that has changed radically because I started being a professional 12 years ago, something like that. And it is just a different world. When I was in art school, learning to be an artist and stuff, I think there was 5 video tutorials, and that's it. That was the extent of video tutorials on digital painting, and that's all you had. There was just any techniques or anything were obscure knowledge that maybe you could figure out if you translated these German language articles or something like that, because there are all these obscure sources on the internet, and it was just a strange world back then, and there just wasn't that much out there. And then you look at today and it's just ridiculous. You get to have incredible instruction just for free. You can watch YouTube all day and watch tons of really good stuff for free, which just blows my mind. Before you had to pay money and wait for a DVD to show up in the mail.
I've never watched an art DVD.
Those were the days when you got a DVD. I think I still have some of those sitting around somewhere.
Cute.
I know, really old school here.
That's dating you.
Yeah, I feel old now. It's just when Noah stares into space and just realizes how old he is. You're oh well. And the same goes for just the general quality of art that you would see. The stuff that I used to get my first jobs probably wouldn't get me much these days. It might get me something. They weren't terrible, but they're not great. They're not gonna turn any heads. But they were more than enough to get me great work when I was starting out. Just because the bar has risen so high that it's gotten a little ridiculous. Techniques have gotten better, education has gotten better. And there's just so many more people trying to do this. People realize that you don't have to go to art school. You can actually just sit in your basement and paint for a few years and get really good at this. It doesn't require any exceptional skills. It doesn't require that much expensive gear anymore. You've got stuff like Blender that's 100% free, Unreal that's 100% free. You've got all these things that suddenly, you can paint super cheap and come up with this good stuff. So it's really changed the whole field in the 10 years since I started. It's pretty wild to see.
Yeah, it's a little bit daunting for those of us who are kind of just getting into it. It's just like, where do you even begin? And I think that before we go too far on how to counteract all this stuff and how to get ahead, I actually want to address this whole idea of getting ahead. It's something that I personally really struggled with is, when you're on the internet looking at artists you admire, you're seeing kind of the people that are like the cream of the crop, like rising to the top, 2 million followers, and you're just like that is what you're comparing yourself to and saying, I want to be like that person. They have a successful career. I remember when I thought that having 1,000 followers would just be this like absolute dream come true and I'd never be discontented ever again.
Sure.
And here I am I'm at 22,000, I think. And it's like, I don't feel like that's enough and that's absurd.
Right.
And I think it's so when we're talking about, how the market's shifting, how it's getting saturated with artists, the bar for being special and standing out is always going to be that top percentage of people. So even when we have access to all of these tools and all this great learning stuff, so does everyone else. And that bar moves with us. And it's always usually that top percentage of people that we kind of glamorize and want to be like and compare ourselves to. The thing is, you can't have everyone be the top percent. And I don't think it's right for us to assume that we have to be in the top percentages in order to live happy, fulfilled lives and have good, rewarding careers. There is so much space there. Like, there shouldn't be reserved for 1% of people. So did you want to add at all to that before I talk?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Let's keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that, there are so many opportunities out there. Like, I don't have a fraction of the followers of the most famous, not even like, it's depressing how tiny I am compared to some artists. And yet, I get to help thousands of people with my work. I get to, I love what I do. My lifestyle is paid for. I don't have to stress out. And that's amazing. I'm like, what more do I need? And I wish more people would realize that you don't have to be at the top in order to have that, and that there is space. We can we can expand into that. We don't need to be exceptional in order to. We don't need to stand out in order to be comfortable and be happy. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to start with before we tell you how to be exceptional and stand out and crush the competition. Just wanted to say there doesn't need to be competition. So do you want to get started then on maybe how do we stand out when everyone's just really good?
Who knows? I'm here for you to tell me.
Awkward.
You're going to tell me how to stand
Shall
out.
we stop the camera?
It's like,
a bit
oh, no,
embarrassing.
we're just going to go cry in the corner now. So I think at least my biggest one that really makes a difference is learning to combine different skills together. It's relatively easy, I say that, to get in the top 10% of any skill. If you work hard, you practice, you're relatively competent at the thing, you can get probably in the top 10% of most things. If you dedicate yourself to golf and all you do is golf every week, you can probably, take enough lessons, watch enough videos, and probably get in the top 10% if you work really hard. Can you get in the top 1%? Probably not. Top 1% is a whole different world. And the problem is that when you're looking at art online, you're often seeing that top 1%. You're seeing the guys working on Star Wars. You're seeing the people with 2 million followers. You're seeing these 18-year-olds that have the 2 million followers. You're seeing this top 1% of these exceptional success cases where, they started practicing and watching these good videos at 12 years old and they've done nothing but practice. And they're incredible. And so we see these top 1% cases and we realize we're not the top 1%. And that's a bummer. And there's not much you can really do about that. Like, you can't go back in time, you can't change those things, you can't just magically make yourself exceptionally better than everyone else. That's not how life works. But the thing is you can combine multiple skills and interests. And so if you take two different categories of things that you can get in the top 10% of, and you smash them together into a cool niche, then suddenly you are kind of the top 1%, because you're that person, that exceptional person that does that one thing better than other people. And that's something that we've had a lot of experience with. For instance, one of the ones that I have is photography. I'm not a photographer. I'm okay with a camera. I know kind of how they work, and they're kind of fun. And I've shot with cameras for a long time now. You know, I took all of 2 classes in college on photography, and it was a lot of fun. But I was never like gonna be a photographer professionally. It wasn't my calling. But I'm also an artist. I'm also a painter. And I recognize the needs and desires of artists and what they want out of photographs for reference. And so I was able to smash those two things together, and suddenly I'm a fairly exceptional reference photographer.
Right.
You know, because there's not that many people. There's a lot of phenomenal photographers. There's a lot of great artists, a lot of great painters. But there's very few that are that crossover point, that have the interest and desire to be really good at two different things. And you can multiply that and, you know, have 3, 4, 5 different things. You can have interests that you're interested in. And this is one that you obviously have a lot of experience with.
Right, and it's actually something that I've applied as a growing artist. I'm probably going to, you don't tell me off for saying this, but I still don't think that if all I was doing was making art, I would have an audience the size I have. I'm like, my art isn't good enough to justify the size of my audience. Thank you.
But you're wrong.
Thank you.
Our next video should be on how you're wrong.
How Rachel is wrong. But
let's work on Rachel's self-esteem.
I had, it's gonna be a long video, honey. It took, like, I had a large following for my art long before I fully deserved it. And like, whatever, there are a lot of people who are much better at art than I am, who have smaller audiences, and that has been true. It's getting, you know, I've had a pretty chill couple of years in terms of growing audiences, and it's starting to feel more balanced. But especially 2 or 3 years ago, like, I was just like an emerging student basically, and I had a big following, and it wasn't because my art alone warranted it. It was because of everything else I was doing as well. I wasn't just sharing paintings, I was also talking to other people who are learning how to do art and sharing my experience, what I'm learning, what things have been difficult and how I've overcome them. And I was becoming a creative coach, and because I was fascinated by everything else that goes into our journeys beside the studying art. And so these things, like, and then doing reference photos with you and stuff, and slowly I was just picking up bits. And rather than just, I mean, everyone wants you to specialize. Everyone's like, have a brand, like hyper focus on your niche and all this stuff. But then you end up running into this other issue where all you're doing is presenting one flat version of yourself to the world. But I was able to get both an audience and make a living before other people at the same skill level, because I was sharing the other stuff too. And that is the way that you can stand out and not just be like another artist. So yeah. Yeah,
it's great. Some of the other skills that I've used and developed is obviously like making websites. That was super handy. Writing, teaching, that kind of stuff. Again, that sets me apart. I'm not going to be the greatest writer of the 21st century or whatever, but I'm a pretty good writer and pretty good artist, and suddenly that sets me apart. Same goes for my general just teaching ability. There's a lot of great artists that are not particularly great teachers, but I'm probably above average at teaching and a little bit above average at art. And so because of that, people tend to look at my instructional stuff because, you know, I'm maybe better able to explain some of that stuff. So getting to develop these other skills, these other interests is really important. And that can be as simple as like what you're interested in art. because that was another thing that did actually help me both specialize and combine two interests. Was when I started out, I was a landscape painter. That's what people knew me as, and obviously that is focusing in on a niche, but it's also taking something else that I love, which is nature and hiking and traveling and all that kind of stuff, and bringing that in and combining that with my art, which is not something that everybody has or is interested in doing. And so I had a little bit more interest in bringing those environments together. So it wasn't just that, all I do is paint environments. It was, I love this stuff and I really want to deep dive into it. So I think if you have any of those interests, whatever they happen to be, I think cultivate them, nurture them.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really nice thing, is that where if you look at it as just, I need to be really, 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 really good at art, suddenly you're committing yourself to like an unnatural amount of work. Like trying to get ahead of other people is unhealthy at this point. You'd have to work obscenely hard. This, however, allows you to draw on things that are uniquely you. That's just really nice. I like the idea that the very thing that could set you apart is exactly what you already have. It's rather than taking on ambitious study programs and like cutting things out of your life, it's looking at the things that you love that you've been neglecting and saying, well, actually, maybe this could be used somewhere. Maybe someone will find this interesting. And it's just a much nicer, more hopeful way of looking at things. I think that there's a misconception that you have to be either outstanding and better than everyone else, or you have to be original. And this is another one that I've written an article about, is that not only is original kind of overrated, it's also, we're pretty wrong in what we think constitutes originality. And I think that what you'll actually find when someone does something original, it's not created in a vacuum. It's drawn upon influences. You can't be not influenced. We don't like things that aren't influenced, that they're just like things that are made in a vacuum, that are entirely random and new and original. Freak us out because there's no context for it. It's not familiar, and we're like, this is weird. Familiarity is a huge part of originality. And the best way to bring originality into your work is not to completely reinvent the wheel. It's to incorporate things that other people aren't incorporating. It's saying like, oh, well, this is really interesting, and I have like enjoyed this my whole life, and I don't really see other people doing that in art, say. I want to try and bring some of that into my work. That's what originality is. And like for instance, like Loish is an amazing artist and absolutely iconic, and her style has bred a whole generation of like style. It's like this is like Loish's style. It's her own thing. But she has influences. Like probably the reason why her art is like so popular in the illustration community is because she studied animation. She doesn't do, I don't know if she does animation these days, but she didn't train as an illustrator like the rest of us did. She trained as an animator, and then she approached art where the rest of us were sort of applying what we'd learned kind of in the same industry. She comes in at the side with like these animation skills that no one else was using. And it set her apart, and it gave her a style that became iconic. She didn't invent animation. She just brought in other things that people weren't using that already existed elsewhere. She just used her skills and her interests to do something differently. And that's so much more accessible than trying to come up with entirely new ways of doing things. It's much more hopeful.
People don't create stuff in vacuums. Like that's just not how any new work is created. You look back in art history, and it's not like any of these new people that made these breaking leaps in art were suddenly just like inventing art completely anew. They were, building off of what already existed and pushing it a step further, often influenced by, what's happening in the world, what new technologies are being invented. I mean, like in Impressionism, like when they actually got outside and painted, that was a big thing. And part of the reason that they got out and painted like that is they invented the paint tube. And suddenly you could take a tube of paint and go outside and paint. And then suddenly you get all this, different groundbreaking leap in landscape painting because people are going outside and bringing their paints with them. And you get this whole new school of art starting. So
Nice.
A lot of different stuff can influence, where art is heading, where things are growing. And I think that's a large part of why things have changed so much in the last 10 years is a lot of new technologies are just showing up and changing things. And that baseline of where art is at is just super high and just growing really fast. I'm constantly blown away by just how incredible these things are. Just because it changed so much since, I got started about 20 years ago. Like, it's a different world. It's absolutely crazy.
Yes.
And we're actually going to talk about one of those soon. We're going to talk about AI art. Yeah, controversial. So yeah, that'll be fun. But yeah, just again, another one of those things that gets added to this pile of what's this going to do to art and artists, and and see where that's going moving forward. So what's our next thing for? Oh, do you want to do personality? Personality's good.
Yes, actually, to be fair, that's kind of looping around. I was ready to end it. I was like, and that is the end. He's like, wait, personality.
But wait, there's more.
That should have been mentioned in the beginning. That's kind of what I was saying about the me sharing my journey and stuff. And people connect with story. At the end of the day, like, we like cool images, but when there's an absolute abundance of cool images, we start looking for story. And personality and sharing our personality online is a big part of that story. It's, if you've got, so it's becoming more commonplace to be outstanding at art. And you've got two artists who are cranking out outstanding work. You have one that is, just posting the outstanding work. And then you have the other who's talking about the role that art has played in their life, how they felt growing up with art, how they were alienated as a teenager, how they rediscovered themselves as an adult, talking about why they've made the pieces and how it's going to hopefully reach you too. Who do you think you're going to go back and find later? Story is, I think, a greatly overlooked part of art. It is everything about not just the story in the picture itself, but the story of how it was made and the story of who made it. It's the whole reason, fine art, it's all about the story. And I think a lot of us are missing an opportunity to tap into something really powerful there, because we all have our story. And sharing that with people in a way that feels safe and honest can really open up a huge audience, just huge opportunities for connection with people. So yeah, that was going to say what I was going to say about
cool.
personality.
Yeah. I think it's another really important one that a lot of people neglect. They're they want to be an artist, they want to be known for their art, and that's fair, but that's really not enough these days. I can hop on ArtStation and scroll for hours and see constantly new artists that, and it's just, it blows my mind that there's just so many artists these days. It's utterly incredible, and it's pretty easy to get lost in that sea of artists.
Yeah.
But if you are a person that can stand out in some way, I think that's kind of what we're aiming to do.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, you don't need every single person to know who you are in order to do this well.
No.
You just need enough people to kind of support what you're doing, support your vision, and connect with you. And that doesn't actually need to be very many people, depending on what it is that you're doing with your work. Yeah. And story is what people connect to. Cool images are cool, and the internet's full of them now. And it's that story and human connection that people really latch onto, and it creates that loyalty that people are kind of looking for, that devoted fan base. They don't happen because you make cool images. They happen because they are connecting with the story somehow, in whatever way that is. And I think it's such an easy thing. I think there's a misconception that, you want to be professional online, this is your work, and that's really important. And I think that it's a bit of a throwback to an attitude that you can't be a person at work, that you are a corporate machine. And I definitely see that bleeding into some people who are putting their art online. They're kind of frightened of expressing any part of their personality. I think there is a very happy in between where you can present your personality professionally, and there is that opportunity for people to connect. So yeah.
Is that everything on our list?
I think that's everything on our list. There's
Cool.
nothing else to add there.
All right.
So yeah.
We've solved every problem.
That's it.
Done.
Go make stuff.
Yeah.
Go be happy. You're welcome.
Go have an amazing career after watching this one video.
You can do it. I believe in you.
But you really can do it. Like that's the thing, is that I think there is, in conjunction with there being an incredible number of artists, there's also an incredible need and desire for art. And I think if you can be exceptional in some way, you can make something a little bit different. You can, target your super specific niche, that suddenly I think you can find room to be an artist and be successful at it too.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty.
Is that everything?
I think so.
All right.
So until next time.
Bye.